What is the lead paint stare, or lead poisoning stare, whatever you want to call it? Lead is in a lot of things other than just paint. It's a bit of a meme right now, and you might have experienced it for yourself already.
I love the lead poisoning stare that boomers give you.
There's been this trend going around where people share their experiences dealing with old people, and one thing they talk about is how when they talk to them in public, the response they often get is a blank stare.
Alright, something kind of weird keeps happening to me, and I need to know if it's just me. Am I the only one that's saying polite things to older people in public places and they just look at you?
Here's a pretty good example of it. This video is just someone joking about it, but it demonstrates it pretty well.
Excuse me, sir. Do you mind moving your cart? If I could just sneak by, could you just move your cart just a little bit for me, please? Thank you, sir. Just a little bit more, just so I can just sneak past you. Thank you. Sorry. Really sorry about this.
My favorite is when they just stop in their tracks in the middle of the aisle while making contact with you. Like, I know you saw me coming, just move. People in the comments will be like, oh, that's that lead paint stare, but what exactly does that mean? Well, lead is a neurotoxin, and it has some horrible effects if you get exposed to it. And the tricky thing is when you get exposed to it, it doesn't immediately affect you. It builds up in your blood over a span of months or even years. There's a long list of symptoms here for children, which is the group that's most likely exposed to it. But what we want to see is the effects it has on adults. Have you been exposed to lead? Let me know in the comments. That is if you know how to read and write, because it seriously messes up your head. Oh, and be sure to subscribe. Look right here. It says difficulty with memory or concentration and mood disorders. But here's where things get interesting. Boomers aren't actually the group most likely to be affected by lead poisoning. It's Gen X. Don't come at me, Gen Xers. This just means your group was at a higher risk. I'm not saying you personally who's watching this video has lead poisoning, so don't leave a nasty comment. And if you do feel an irrational urge to leave a hateful comment, then you might be the one who's exposed to lead, because that's one of the symptoms.
I do work here?
Yes, I do. Can I help you?
Do you work here?
Yes, how may I help you?
I'm glad that somebody does. I'm looking for a Kentia palm.
Okay.
Kentia palm specifically. You work at a plant nursery. I'm gonna make a bold assumption that you know what that is.
Kentia palm. Yeah, let me look in our system just so I can see if we have it in stock. Sir?
Anyone who's ever worked customer service has dealt with this guy. Lead paint wasn't banned in the US until 1978, which is a problem because kids love shoving crap in their mouth like paint chips. And if your dad was repainting and sanding old stuff, it was going straight into your lungs. And there's no chance anyone was wearing a dust mask back in those days. I actually worked at a paint factory a few years ago doing QC, and it was like powder coating, not the liquid paint. So there's dust in the air constantly, and none of the old guys wore masks, like at all. I wore full respirator, ear protection because it was loud, and these guys were just walking around raw dog in the air. Like, obviously it wasn't lead paint, but that's not good for your lungs regardless. Lead was also in gasoline until much more recently. That's why you still see gas labeled unleaded gas, because it wasn't even that long ago that it changed. Leaded gas for cars was banned in the US in 1996, but the researchers say that anyone born before the end of that era, and especially those at the peak of its use in the 1960s and 1970s, had concerningly high lead exposure as children. This led to soil near roadways being contaminated for years. And once again, kids love shoving crap in their mouth. Don't tell my mom because she'd be pissed at him, but I once saw my grandpa pour out a can of old gasoline right on the side of the road in a ditch. It was after the era of lead in gasoline, but you know that generation was doing that before that. Scientists estimate that this amounted to a total loss of IQ of 824,097,690 IQ points, disproportionately endured by those born between 1951 and 1980. That's the equivalent of 5,150,610 Stephen Hawkings. You can't convince me this hasn't had an effect on global politics. You know, Stephen Hawking's IQ was only 160. I kind of expected more. Maybe if he spent less time on Epstein's island, he would be smarter. For the longest time, it was used in all sorts of things. Here's a short list of some of the things it was used in or that may contain it. Soil, household dust, pottery, toys, gotta watch out for those imported ones especially, cosmetics, herbal remedies, lead bullets, and Stanley cups apparently. I don't get this whole Stanley Cup craze. This is the only Stanley Cup I know. Oh, that was such a boomer joke. The headlines would have you believe you're drinking it, but of course they're just fear-mongering. After looking into it, it seems a lead-based solder is used to seal the vacuum chamber inside the walls of the cup. That chamber is used to help insulate the cup, and it's completely sealed off inside the cup, so it's relatively safe as long as you don't like cut it open or something. I just know someone on TikTok is gonna cut one open.
Vamos prender ele aqui, ó. Agora temos chique, temos morsa, óculos de proteção. Eu vou cortar no laço, né? O bicho tá quente, hein? Parrudo o copo, hein? Pra ver porque tem um pininho. Sabe o que é isso, mas?
Deve ser pra fazer o vácuo.
Deve montar tudo. Aí depois puxa, faz o vácuo e fecha e sela.
I would still prefer if there was no lead in it, and other companies have found alternatives to it. It's also in your water pipes, and an alarming amount of city water lines are made out of lead, but luckily the buildup of minerals deposited on the inside of the pipes from the water itself makes a barrier between the pipes, so it's relatively safe. But there's really no safe level of lead exposure, so it's better that we just replace these pipes. Some historians even believe it may have hastened the fall of the Roman Empire. They consumed a lot of lead. They used it in pipes, to line coffins, in their pots and their utensils. They also used lead acetate as a sweetener, in an era where cane sugar and honey were quite scarce. They did have an abundance of grapes and used to boil down the juice in their lead pots. Lead ions would leach into the juice and combine with the acetate from the grapes. The resulting syrup was very sweet and used in wines and a wide variety of foods. They drank it as a sweetener, enough said. You could even say my Roman Empire is thinking about lead paint exposure. And just one last point, just to clarify, when an old person does it, it might just be cognitive decline. It's unfortunately something that just happens as we age, and it will happen to you. I'll leave you here with that grim thought. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time.